Hello, everyone. I want to talk about the book called Indistractable by Nir Eyal, and the subtitle is How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life. I find this book very helpful in my own habits and my own methods of how I achieve deep work. And it also has also helped me in how I'm intentional with my relationships. It's intentionality helping me in my conversations with people about how to remain indistractable. So I wanted to provide this book and this overview of this book for all of you. You can find other summaries and hear from the author himself with videos all over the internet, but the specificity of which we can do here for our own work in the way of Christ and His apostles, of holding good symposiums in our churches, of leading well, and of having deeper relationships and deeper forms of our own habits around our work is important for all of us. So let's get started here. Okay, Indistractable by Nir Eyal. There's 4 parts in the beginning that are the most helpful. It's the core of the book. And it's mastering your internal triggers. It's making time for traction. We're going to talk about all these, but hack back external triggers that are coming in and being bothersome and distracting you, and then prevent distractions with pacts, that is making truces and pacts with yourself. Then he goes on, these 3 parts are also helpful, not as helpful for us in our work, but making your workplace indistractable, raising indistractable children, and also managing your relationships to be indistractable. He provides some good examples and some good things to follow here. Now, before we get into these parts, let me show you how I've got it organized on this tool. Part 1, which is mastering your internal triggers, figuring out how you're motivated really around your MAP, your motivated ability pattern. For us is good to know, knowing what your motivations are. And that's what this part is about. Chapter 3 through 8. Part 2 is chapter 9 through 12, and this is how you block your time in order to have deep work. Getting traction, he calls it. Part 3 is hack back external triggers. We always have these triggers on our phones, on our computers, from other people, and it disrupts our work, it disrupts our thoughts, it disrupts us being on the internet, searching for things, and you go into a rabbit hole of research. This is about how to hack back those external triggers. Part 4 is chapter 22 to 28, and that is how you make pacts with yourself. How do you make agreements with yourself? How do you, in a healthy way, manipulate yourself to get some work done and deep work done? Part 6 is Indistractable Children. This is we think of Jonathan Haidt here in a lot of our work. We think of other authors, Gene Twenge, who wrote the book Generations. This is about children and how they can really develop habits of being indistractable, how they need to develop it. Otherwise, they're going to be searching for their phones and on their phones and computers way too often. And then part 7 is Indistractable Relationships. So let me take you through this book. The introduction in chapter 1 here is just making the case that distractions get out of hand, and it feels like that you don't have control of your own life, that someone else is making decisions for you. But the good news is that you can retrain your brain. We can do it. It starts with your habits. And so the whole purpose of this book is about becoming more productive, both physically and mentally, while being stronger and better rested and fulfilled. We talk a little bit about sleep in this book. That can be helpful. Chapter 2 is telling us that today's world, the technological world that we live in, is full of distractions. And it's got instantaneous ability to check things, to research things, to look up things. And that really gives us a lack of attention and a lack of being able to focus on something in order to do deep work. So we need attention and we need a focus, he says, because that's critical for a fulfilled life. This is what we would say is John 10:10, living a full. John wrote his 5 letters, John and the 3-letter package, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John in Revelation, in order to live a full, abundant life, an extraordinary and abundant life. So this has to do with our attention and how we train our brains. So part 1, let's go to part 1 here, and this is about your internal triggers. So what this author does is the first chapter of each of the parts, each of the 7 parts, he introduces and tells us what he means by the mastering the internal triggers, or the title of each part. So he says, everyone is trying to relieve discomfort. And that's the root of everything. We're trying to relieve discomfort, and we use distractions actually to escape from reality. So that is okay in and of itself, but having those thoughts and having that discomfort, but it's how we respond to those distractions is what's critical. It's not bad to have those discomforts in life. It's actually normal, a normal human condition. We're not satisfied all the time. He'll talk about that next, but how we respond to distractions is the key. So chapter 4, he says, satisfaction and pleasures are actually temporary. You can't live in a state of euphoria all the time. And this is because of 4 main things, and that is boredom. The mind does not like to be alone, and negativity bias. We tend to see negative events and negative things as more powerful than positive events. We also have rumination. This is part of the cognitive behavior therapy, one of the 17 categories of humans keep thinking about bad experiences over and over and over, just like a cow ruminates and chews through its 4 stomachs. In this way, we ruminate on our bad experiences. And hedonic, we quickly return to a baseline of satisfactions. And so these are why satisfactions and pleasures are temporary, because of these 4 things. You're of 2 minds in this sense, he says. It's a lie that we tell ourselves that if you're not currently happy, then you're not normal. If I'm discomforted right now or displeased right now, then that's not a good state to be in, and then we're just not normal. And that's just simply just not true. Because if you want to master distraction, then you need to be able to deal with discomfort. Chapter 5, he goes in and he says, typically what people try to do is they try to resist the urge and try to resist being discomforted. But that backfires, because if you say to yourself, don't think about it, you tend to think about it more. He uses the example of telling people not to think about a white polar bear, and as soon as people say to you, don't think about a white polar bear, you begin to envision a white polar bear. So you actually need techniques for disarming your temptations and disarming yourself. And so what we need to do is reimagine the trigger, we need to reimagine the task, and we need to look at our temperament. And so these next chapters are all about reimagining the trigger, the task, and the temperament. So chapter 6 is reimagining the trigger, and he starts off by saying you cannot control the feelings nor the thoughts that come into your head. That's okay to just have those things. You must learn how to cope with those messages that are flowing through your mind. So step 1 is what precedes the distraction. Look for the discomfort, anxious cravings, restlessness, negative thoughts. Look for what precedes the distraction you're looking for. Step 2, he offers a suggestion and tool of writing it down. Write down the trigger, the time of day, what you're doing, how you felt. Identify the triggers. So often with men, it's you're hungry, you're tired, and with humans, those are often, then they lead, that's a discomfort, and you want to relieve that discomfort. Step 3 is you explore your sensations. Don't judge yourself and get curious before you're acting. So you start thinking that, oh, I want to check my phone to see if there's any messages or see if there's an email. What precedes that? Write down what you're doing during that time, and then explore just before you do anything. He says down at the bottom here, rather than act on the impulse, use a 10-minute rule. Wait 10 minutes before you reach for your phone. Wait 10 minutes before you go check your email. Wait 10 minutes before you go text somebody exactly what you're thinking right now. So explore those sensations. Be curious about them. That's step 3. Step 4, he says, beware of transition moments. When you move from one task to another task in life, that's often when you're prone to have these thoughts that come through your mind, filter through your mind, and then if you act upon them right away, that it can lead to times of distraction. So he gives you another tool of imagining all these thoughts on a leaf. If you're sitting by a river, imagine these thoughts that are on a leaf and they're floating by on the river. And so you just let them go for at least 10 minutes, he says, as a suggestion in chapter 6. Chapter 7, he talks about reimagining the task, some task or something you have to do. He talks about how fun and play do not have to make us feel good. They can be used as tools to keep us focused. So make it fun, make it a game, make it a challenge for yourself, and have fun with it. Pay close attention to things, make it fun, and look for the hidden beauty in things. He says, stay curious. The cure for being bored is to be curious. I was on a walk this morning. I walked by a fence, and I saw the fence had posts in it, and they were equally spaced. And I said, how many strands of wire, I wonder, are in between, and how many they have rows and columns like an Excel spreadsheet. How many rows and columns are in between each post, and is it even between each of the posts all the way down? Sure enough, it was close to perfect, but not exactly perfect. There were 7 rows and 28 columns between each post. So the cure for boredom is curiosity. Chapter 8. You reimagine your temperament. So you need to think of yourself differently. So in our counseling and shepherding, we use a tool called the Taylor-Johnson temperament analysis. And that, of course, has to do with a person's temperament. We do it pre-marriage sessions. We do it after marriage sessions. We do it for individuals. It's a very, very helpful tool. But what he's talking about here is how you need to think about yourself. If you think about yourself one way, that is ultimately, if you do that, ruminate it over and over, that's what you can become. And so he says, poor temperament is actually caused by self-defeating thoughts. If you say to yourself, man, I'm just not a good reader. I am just not very disciplined. I am just not, those self-defeating thoughts give you a poor temperament. And he says, if you consistently tell yourself positive messages, and that can result in being more resilient and stronger. So this is about reimagining your temperament. We tell ourselves so many negative messages and then ruminate on them as humans. We must be aware of those messages we tell ourselves. And we can we can change those messages by telling yourself. He says, tell yourself you're indistractable. Tell yourself you're strong. And that's a suggestion that he gives. So that is part 1 of Indistractable. And let's go to part 2, which is make time for traction. So he says time is our most precious asset, and thus you should set aside time for things you value. Time is your biggest asset. So he says if you don't have any plan for your time, then you actually can't tell the difference between traction or distraction. So he says if you have something to do, if you say I'm going to record this video about this book, Indistractable, for all of you during this time, I can tell if I'm doing something else that it's distraction. But if I'm doing this video for all of you, I know I'm getting traction during this time. He suggests some tools here, and that is time boxing and reflection. So time boxing is decide what you want to do, and what you're going to do, and then decide when you're going to do it. So like I just said, during this hour block, I'm going to record this video. Now the video itself may not be an hour long, but I'm going to use this hour in order to do this video. Reflection. When did you get distracted? Adjust your calendar to align your values. Sometimes when you start getting hungry, in the evening when you start getting tired, you become getting distracted. And so he offers you again to reflect, like he does in part 1. You need to reflect, constantly be reflecting on what your triggers are. So success is if you did what you planned to do. So if you plan to rest and read a book or watch some TV or do some other things, that is a good use of time if that's what you're planning to do. Chapter 11, he talks about scheduling relationships. He brings up this 75-year-old Harvard study. It's been going on for 75 years. A lot of people have been referencing it through the last 20 years. It follows a whole bunch of people from their early days and to their laters of life, and they just follow them and interview them with key questions. And basically the summation of it is what keeps us happier and healthier in our life, what gives us a full life. And in this case, in the 75-year-old study, it's good relationships. Good relationships. So he's arguing you need to schedule time for your relationships because in the 168 hours in a week, you value relationships, and so you have to schedule them. Your schedule time with family, because you value them, don't give them what's ever left over. You come home from the end of the day and you just give them the last part of your bucket, the last part of what you have left in your tank. You need to schedule those times with your family, he says. He also says when you're together, then ask core questions of each other and questions that everybody can circle around. That way you don't end up just using your time to talk about the weather or things that are maybe on the surface, but let's be intentional with one another and get to the depth of each other. And so he gives us suggestions of what's one thing you're thankful for, or what's one thing that you're thankful your parents did with you, or what's your favorite memory of 10 to 15, or he gives some suggestions. So when you get together with people, when you get together with family, have one or two key questions that everybody can share. And sometimes some of those questions, they can last for an hour, hours, because people go on and tell stories from years ago. That prompts other people. That prompts emotions of laughter and of weeping with people. So those are good things to have when you're together. Be focused on each other when you're together. Don't get onto your devices when you're with each other. Chapter 10, he talks about, remember, this is part 2 about traction, getting time for traction. You need to control the inputs, not the outcome. So this is the one thing you can control. This is true in sports. This is true with all aspects of life. Certainly, I've talked a lot about this with our teenagers as they enter into sports. And that is, you can't control whether you win or not, but you can control how well you practice and how disciplined you are in practice. So you need to invest in yourself with exercise, sleep, your diet, spending time reading and writing and listening. Those are the inputs that we can create, that we can maintain healthy bodies, but the output we cannot control. He says when a big problem about sleep is that when people cannot sleep, they begin to think about how they're not sleeping. And then they begin to think about how this is going to ruin the next day. And then they start thinking about things that are going to happen the next day and how if they can't sleep, how it's going to ruin those meetings. It's going to ruin this relationship. It's going to ruin this. That's ruminating. And that's a negative bias that we talked about earlier. And so this rumination and this distraction is actually the core cause of all insomnia. So instead of saying those things and thinking the negative things, think about and say to yourself, he suggests, this is how my body gets what it needs to get, and it will tell me when I need to go back to sleep. So control the inputs, not the outcome. Don't be so hard on yourself, especially when it comes to sleep. Chapter 12, he moves into workplace settings, and he says, your paid work is essential for your societies. And we are all working for the benefit of someone else, whether we're working for the benefit of our leadership or we're working for the benefit of products in which they serve. I've got a thing of water here, and whoever put this together, it's serving me. The product is serving. And so this is what we would call, all of us have to seek the welfare of our cities. And that's what he's talking about here a little bit, but he's talking specifically about sinking at work. The first part of this chapter is very much seek the welfare. He says, at your workplace, use a time box schedule, and so that people know when you can be distracted and when you can't be distracted. That's very important, because if you want to be focused on something for that hour, you should not have people pinging you. You shouldn't have people knocking on your door. You shouldn't have people coming up to your cubicle, leaning over, wanting to talk about things. You need to let them know that you're indistractable in times when you can be distracted. He says to employers that often the employees are perceived as being slow, but in reality, they just lack productivity tools. So this reminds me of the book, How to Change Things When Change is Hard. He often talks about some of the same things here, that when people look like lazy, people look like they're being unproductive, look like they're slow, it's actually because they don't have the tools needed in order to be productive. This author, Nir Eyal, is saying the same thing. All right, part 3 is about hacking back. Let me turn that off. I don't know how it came on, so I'll just leave it. Part 3 is about hacking back external triggers. So this is the pings, the dings, the alarms, the notifications, and the companies that make these, they make them hard to ignore. But that comes with a price, because you lose your time and you lose your focus. In another book, another video, I can show you about how it takes 15 to 25 minutes for the average human in order to ramp up and get focused. So once you get focused, you need to stay focused for that season of time, because if you start looking at your phone now all of a sudden you need to, and you get back, now you need another 15, 20 minutes in order to get back locked in. So hack back those things. And he says the more we respond to our notifications, we're actually training our brain into a never-ending stimulus loop. So we want a response to our message. And if we keep looking, has people responded? Have they responded? Oh, they haven't responded. Oh, that's terrible. Or I must not have worded it right. Or I must be dumb. Or they must think I'm dumb. Or they must. And so I'm going to text them again. And so then you text them again. And you end up in this never-ending stimulus response loop, and you're actually training your brain the wrong thing. You need to train your brain instead of how to have focused, disciplined, intentional work. So the best way when you're doing work is to put your devices out of sight. If you can see them, then it's easier to be distracted. So get them out of sight. I have my phone over here in a bag on Do Not Disturb right now. It's way out of sight. It's out of mind. Chapter 14 is defend your focus time. So this is about at work and hack back your assumptions. It's also in your family too. But interruptions lead to mistakes. He gives an example about in hospitals. you can't do your best work when you're distracted, when you're trying to do multiple things. You can multitask. He's going to talk about that up here later, but it's you don't get your best work done when you're distracted. Chapter 15, he talks about email, and email you need to hack back. And he says email is the mother of all forming habits. The uncertainty keeps us coming back to it. And the desire to get a response keeps us going. So, I wonder who emailed. I wonder if in what they said, it could be good, it could be bad. And that's what actually the lure of it becomes. It could go anywhere. And so that anticipation gives us a desire to keep checking it. He gives an idea here. He says, to receive less emails, you must send less emails. He also says, give emails time to breathe. Delay your responses, slow down. You don't need to respond right away, and you don't need to email back thanks. You don't need to less responses. Receive less emails. You need to send less emails. Use email email can be used as a great tool, but don't use it as a response tool to a stimulus response. Use it for basic communications. So he says, process your emails less frequently. I have a habit of I process emails about 3 times a day, and I do it in very big batches. So there's 15 in there. I'll process all 15. Although I will separate some, I need to think about it later. That goes over here. I can respond now. I'll respond now. These I don't need to respond, and I send them out. So do them in big batches. Don't handle them multiple times. Handle them primarily, if you can, just once. Not always can you do that, but that's hack back your email. Group chats, another thing to hack back on. Use it like a sauna. Stay in it for a while and then leave, he says. 2, he says, schedule time to look at group text. Don't, every time someone says thumbs up or thanks or I didn't know that. When does the game start? Schedule times to look at the text. Don't just because someone responds doesn't mean you need to look at it immediately. Step 3, be picky on whom. If you're setting up the group chat, be picky about who do you include. And then number 4, he says, use it selectively if you're setting up the group chats. 17, he talks about hack back meetings. The big problem with meetings is meetings are full of people not paying attention. People are on their devices, people are on their computers, and they're distracted. They're not paying attention fully. A way to help that is have an agenda. And the problems you're trying to solve in your meeting, have people give solutions in written form even ahead of time to make the meeting more productive. And he said in meetings, people should be fully present, not on their devices. Be present with your body and your mind. We talk about this a lot in our gatherings as church paper, how to have dynamic and effective symposiums in our churches, how to have effective discussions. This is true for any of your Socratic discussions you're having. Don't be on your devices. Don't have a computer in front of your face. Don't be on your phone, but be fully present. Invest in each other with your mind and your body and your whole self. 18, hack back your phones. While we can be dependent on our phones, we don't need to be addicted to them. He gives some tools here. Remove games, uninstall apps that you don't use. Organize, rearrange all the things on your apps on your phone. Wear a watch. Don't use your phone to tell time necessarily, because if you use your phone to tell time, you'll be able to see some notifications you have. You won't be able to resist it, and you'll end up looking at those, and you'll become distracted. Adjust all your notifications. On my particular phone, I have 0 notifications, 0 pings, dings, and notifications. If I want to look at text messages, when I do, twice a day, then I'll go look at them. I don't need to know. I don't need to have a red dot on it. I don't need to have a ping or a ding. I'll look at it when I can look at it. You need to develop your own system there, but certainly those are some of the suggestions that he's giving and some of those that I'm giving. Chapter 19 is about hacking back your desktop. He says a cluttered desktop, he gives an example of leader. A cluttered desktop is not only ugly, it's a distraction. You actually can't find things on your desktop, and it becomes a 2-3 minute search for what you actually need. He says, use your desktop only for your most current files, and then also use the do not disturb while you're working. This, again, is about being indistractable, about hacking back your external triggers. Chapter 20 is hack back online articles. Typically, when you read online, you read this one, and then you get pulled into this one, and then you get pulled into this website. Use a reader app. I use a reader app called Readwise. So I'll go to my news site that I like to use, which is a conglomerate of all the different sites, and it pulls them all into one place. I can see the headlines. I can click on the headlines and send it to Readwise, and then I read it in Readwise. I read it in this other app, this reader app, and then I can highlight things. It gets rid of ads. It gets rid of all the bright colors and everything, and I'm able actually just to consume the content that I want to use. He also talks about how you can multitask. When you're walking, when you're working, it's just fine to listen to articles, listen to books. While you're working out, those are all fine things to do. You can multitask. Multitask is not bad. The main thing here is when you read things online, you tend to get started, and let's say you're only going to use 15 minutes. You need to time box it, but then you get started and you just get into this rabbit hole of, oh, I like this, and oh, that looks appealing, and oh, this looks appealing. That's exactly what the sites online want you to do, is they want to be attractive to you, and so they want to pull you in. So instead, look for the content that is interesting to you and what you're pursuing. Put that into a reader app, and then use your reader app to read the articles, highlight them. And furthermore, he doesn't talk about it, but for later when you want to maybe quote this article in something or use it, you can go to your reader app, search it, and it can pull up all the keywords and articles in one spot. So that's another advantage. Hack back social media, the last part of hacking back, and that is use a different browser that removes external triggers. So a lot of choices out there for that one, but I certainly have implemented that into my life as well. Okay, that's going to be enough for this video. I'll come back to you, and we will start part 4 of Indistractable. Okay, bye-bye.